Welcome to the Voice of Diary. Today we're going to listen a really like story which can be happens with you. Put on your earphones and let's start the story. I'm 32 male, the kind of guy people describe as reliable when they don't know what else to say. Steady job, decent credit, the one who pays on time and doesn't make noise about it. I didn't grow up rich, but I grew up watching my father work himself in his silence just to keep the lights on. That wired something into me early. If you can help, you help. If you love someone, you show it in actions. That belief is how this whole thing started. It didn't begin with a fight. It began with a receipt. I was standing in my kitchen, coffee going cold, scrolling through my bank app, doing the boring adult math I did every Sunday. Rent, utilities, insurance. Then I saw a charge I didn't recognize. Not huge, a few $100s. Labeled as temporary support. Temporary had become a funny word by then. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not angry yet, just confused. I told myself there was a logical explanation. There was always a logical explanation. That's what I trained myself to believe. When she woke up, I asked casually, "Hey, did you use my card yesterday?" She didn't look up from her phone. "Yeah, I told you I needed it." No explanation. No pause. Just a statement like gravity. I waited. She didn't add anything. "For what?" I asked. She sighed, finally looking at me like I'd interrupted something important. "Life. I don't want to justify every little thing. I'm independent, remember? Independent. That word again." I nodded because that's what I always did. Nodded, swallowed it, moved on. I told myself it wasn't worth starting a thing over money. Money was replaceable. Relationships weren't. That was my first mistake. We hadn't always lived like this. When we met, she talked about ambition like it was oxygen. Hustle culture quotes, big plans, the whole thing. I respected it. I admired it. I believed in it enough to invest in it. Emotionally at first, then financially. When she lost her job, I stepped in without hesitation. "Just for a bit," she said. "Until I find my footing." I covered rent, groceries, utilities. When her car needed repairs, I paid. When her credit card maxed out, I helped clear it. When she said she needed space to focus on herself, I paid for that too. Each time, it was framed as temporary. Each time, independence was the excuse for why gratitude wasn't required. She didn't say thank you anymore. She said things like, "You're in a better position than me," or "You'd spend it on something useless anyway." Small comments, sharp enough to draw blood if you leaned into them. The ordinary moment that flipped everything wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors. It was a dinner with her friends. We were sitting at a restaurant I'd paid for, again. They were laughing about a weekend trip they'd taken recently. A cabin, nice views, expensive taste. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't even known about it until I saw photos online. One of her friends looked at me and said, jokingly, "You're such a good partner, always holding things down." She smiled and replied, "He doesn't mind. He likes taking care of things." I felt that sentence land somewhere deep and uncomfortable. Later in the car, I said, "You could have asked me before saying that." She laughed. "Why? It's true. That's not the point. Don't make it weird," she said. "You're acting insecure over nothing." That word, insecure, was her favorite shield. Any boundary I tried to draw got labeled that way. Any question became an attack. Any discomfort became my problem. The next few weeks were a blur of small escalations. Bigger charges, less communication, more entitlement dressed up as self-growth. One night, she handed me a list. "I need you to cover these for a while," she said. I looked at it. Rent increase, phone upgrade, gym membership, a business expense that wasn't explained. "For how long?" I asked. She shrugged. "Don't put a timeline on support. That's controlling." That's when something shifted. Not anger. Clarity. I realized I wasn't a partner anymore. I was infrastructure, a resource, a line item. Still, I didn't blow up. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I said, "We need to talk about balance." She rolled her eyes. "You always do this when I'm trying to level up." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of money, but because I finally saw the pattern clearly. Every time she talked about independence, it came with my credit card. Every time she talked about freedom, it was funded by my restraint. The next morning, I started documenting everything. Every transfer, every receipt, every message where support was implied or demanded. I didn't know why yet. I just knew I needed facts, not feelings. When she noticed, she laughed. "What is this? An audit?" "Just organizing," I said. "Relax," she replied. "You're not my bank." But the truth was I was. And she knew it. A week later, I found out she told people I was financially abusive, that I controlled money to keep her dependent, that I held support over her head. I heard it secondhand. A mutual acquaintance, uncomfortable, hesitant, clearly not wanting to get involved. That was the moment the story stopped being about money, because now my reputation was part of the bill. When I confronted her, calmly, she didn't deny it. "I needed them to understand my situation," she said. "You're too sensitive." "Your situation?" I asked. "Or your narrative?" She crossed her arms. "If you didn't want people talking, you shouldn't have made things complicated." That's when I realized something important. She wasn't just entitled. She was strategic. And she was already planning her exit with my resources, my silence, and my name dragged behind her like collateral damage. I didn't argue after that. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten to cut her off. I did something far more dangerous. I let her think she'd won. Once she thought she'd won, she stopped pretending. That's the funny thing about entitlement. It gets sloppy when it feels safe. The first sign was the confidence. She stopped asking entirely. Money moved from my account like it belonged to her. Transfers labeled reimbursement, charges marked necessary, subscriptions I never used but paid for anyway. When I brought it up, she didn't even argue anymore. "This is temporary," she'd say. "Stop micromanaging. You're acting like you own me." Meanwhile, she owned my finances. I stayed quiet on purpose. I wanted patterns, not promises. I wanted proof, not apologies. I noticed she'd started spending differently. Not survival spending, lifestyle spending. New clothes, dinners she never brought home leftovers from, ride shares at odd hours, a storage unit rental I definitely wasn't told about. When I asked about the storage unit, she smirked. "You don't need to know everything." That sentence told me everything. A few days later, I got an email alert from my bank about a credit inquiry. My credit, not hers. I called immediately. Someone had tried to open a line of credit using my information. It hadn't gone through. Not yet. While I confronted her, she didn't panic. She didn't apologize. She got angry. "Why are you spying on me?" she snapped. "I got a credit alert," I said. "That's not spying." She scoffed. "You're overreacting. I was just exploring options. We're together. It benefits both of us." That word again, we, used only when it protected her. I told her calmly, "You don't get to explore options with my identity." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're dramatic. You act like I'm stealing." She said it so casually, it almost sounded rehearsed. That night, I moved my important documents out of the apartment. Passport, social security card, tax records. I didn't tell her. I didn't warn her. I also froze my credit. The next morning, she exploded. "What did you do?" she yelled, holding her phone like evidence. "My application got rejected." "My credit is locked," I said. "As it should be." She stared at me like I'd committed a crime. "You did that on purpose." "Yes," I said. She laughed. Not nervous laughter. Angry laughter. "You can't do this. You're sabotaging me." "No," I replied. "I'm protecting myself." That's when the dirty trick started. She told people I was cutting her off financially to punish her, that I'd promised support and then pulled it away to control her behavior. She implied emotional abuse without ever saying the words outright, just enough to poison the well. She also stopped contributing anything to the household. Groceries vanished. Bills piled up. Late fees appeared. When I confronted her, she said, "If you're going to act single, pay like you're single." The irony almost made me laugh. Then came the biggest move. One afternoon, while I was at work, she cleared out the apartment. Not her things. Our things. Furniture I paid for. Electronics in my name. Even sentimental items she knew mattered to me. She left a note on the counter. Don't contact me. I need space. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk like adults. Space. Funded by theft. I didn't chase her. I didn't call. I didn't send angry messages. I called a lawyer. Here's where reality matters. In the U.S., property ownership isn't about who feels entitled. It's about who paid, whose name is on receipts, whose account funded the purchase. I had documentation for almost everything. The lawyer listened, reviewed the records, and said something that still echoes in my head. She didn't just cross a boundary. She crossed in a liability. We filed a police report for stolen property. Not dramatic, not emotional, factual, itemized, supported by receipts. 2 days later, she texted me for the first time since leaving. This is low. I can't believe you do this to someone you love. I didn't respond. Then she escalated again. She tried to file a civil claim against me for promised financial support. Claimed I'd made verbal commitments to fund her life while she rebuilt. The irony? All our written communication showed the opposite. Temporary help. No contracts. No dependency agreement. No shared accounts beyond what I'd stupidly allowed access to. Her claim didn't survive initial review. Mine did. When the police contacted her about the property, she panicked. Suddenly, she wanted to talk things out. Suddenly, I was her partner again. Suddenly, it was all misunderstandings and stress. She called me crying. Please, this could ruin me. I listened quietly. Then I said, you should have thought about that before you treated me like an ATM with a pulse. I hung up. What she didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that the storage unit she rented was in my name. She'd used my card, my billing address, my information, which meant legally everything inside it belonged to me. And that's when the tables stopped turning slowly. They flipped. If you don't want to miss the second part, stay tuned, because the climax will kick your mind. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and click the bell icon.